Our program today is put on by Dewitt Moss. Dewitt is a Jerome native. He's a retired nuclear engineer from the Department of Energy and Atomic Energy Commission. He has a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from Colorado School of Mines, a Master's of Science in Nuclear Engineering from the University of Tennessee at Oak Ridge School of Reactor Technology. He spent 15 years in the nuclear industry and then moved back to Jerome, and he and his wife Carolyn founded Moss's Greenhouse. So please help me welcome Dewitt Moss.
Okay, I want to thank you. I think I had a weak moment over the Christmas period. My granddaughter had been asking me to make a presentation to the Rotary for about 2 years. And I don't know, she either said please or I was weak, and here I am. Okay, I have a real challenge. I want you to know. I need to kind of be able to present to you the status of the nuclear program, and since I had quite a bit of involvement with the weapons, I've also included our nuclear arsenal. To get to this point, though, I need to just take one moment and tell you what the process of fission and fusion is. Unless some of you are physics majors, this may not be common terminology. Basically, there is one isotope that fissions. It is uranium-235. There are two man-made isotopes that fission, and one of them is plutonium-239, and the other one is uranium-233. Those are the fissionable isotopes that we're going to talk about. On this paper, since I had to get down, we engineers talk only in numbers, okay? And since I had to get all of these numbers down so that I could remember them, I thought I should share them with you. That is the basis of this paper that has been handed out to you so that you can follow along. I can skip over some numbers and you won't be lost. Once you understand the concept, an atom of uranium-235 is impinged with a neutron. It splits, okay? And in the process are two fission products that are formed, but the mass of those fission products, if you recombine them, is less than the uranium atom you started with. That change results in a significant amount of energy. That is the concept of nuclear fission. Just while I'm briefly on it, fusion is the next concept. Fusion, atomic bomb. No, excuse me, fusion is the hydrogen bomb. Okay, fusion is the combination of heavy atoms of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium, and they are impinged on one another, and the same concept happens. They are less mass than what you started with, and as a result, a tremendous amount of energy. If you understand that concept, that's what we're going to talk about, and a minimal amount of fusion, except that the hydrogen bomb is fusion. You cannot get a hydrogen bomb without a fission bomb. It takes an atomic bomb to implode inward and force the combination of deuterium and tritium to produce a hydrogen bomb. Fundamentals.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let me just bring you up to date on the history. Many of you are of the age that we will remember this. 41 to 45, the Manhattan Project developed the atomic bomb. And we needed U-235, and the gaseous diffusion plant at Oak Ridge was developed. This plant is monstrous. This takes gaseous uranium-235 and 238 and pumps them through miles and miles and miles of filter systems so that this little U-235 atom comes out at the end and the U-238 is blocked off in light. And we can do this up to about 93% enrichment, in which we light for bombs. You can also pull off any other side and get 4% enrichment, which we use for nuclear fuel in a civilian power reactor. We also knew if we liked uranium, we would love plutonium. And that is the basis of the plutonium production reactors at Hanford, Washington. Initially, 3 or 4 of them were operated to provide the bomb material, and eventually 9 of them were operable to produce plutonium predominantly for weapons. The Putting all this together occurred at Los Alamos, and that was under the direction of a gentleman by the name of Robert Oppenheimer. And the Manhattan Project was under General Grover, I think, yeah. A masterful program that they put together. Los Alamos was to develop the triggering method for this bomb, the bomb assembly and the testing. The testing was done at Trinity site in New Mexico in July of 45. It proved successful. The bombs were dropped in August of 45. We knew that if we liked atomic bombs, we would love fusion bombs. Okay, and we proceeded on to test fusion bombs, and we tested the very first one out in the Pacific, a hydrogen bomb, in 1952. I think much to our surprise, many of us, Russia came right along 3 years later, and they developed and tested their own hydrogen bomb. And as some of you recall, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were later executed for treason for transferring our weapons secrets to Russia. Hence became the weapons race, MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction, and the Cold War. Also about that time, we started the naval and civilian power programs, which was basically the peaceful uses, not explosive, but peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Now, why would you do this? Just if I take that chart that I have there, there's 7,300 kilowatt hours per ton of coal produced. Natural gas gets down to the 100 cubic feet, and I don't know what an ounce of natural gas is, so I couldn't convert it. Okay, but fission. There are 570,000 kilowatt hours per ounce of U-235. Compare that up above with coal, a ton of it. Deuterium produces deuterium. The fusion concept for the hydrogen bomb produces 5 times that amount, in other words, 2,600,000 kilowatt hours per ounce. If you put this into something that we can all understand, if you had 2 train car loads of 110 cars delivering coal to a power plant to produce electricity for 18 months, every day of the month, you could put the same energy on 4 truckloads of UO2 fuel delivered to a power plant. Now, in summary, why do you like it? This is the summary. Fission creates energy in excess of 10 million times that of fossil fuel of an equivalent weight. That is why you like the atomic energy fission concept and peaceful uses. Okay, to bring you the status on where we are in the world of nuclear power. The United States, 500 plants are operable and operating in the world. The United States has 100 of them. We also have approximately 100 nuclear navy ships, carriers, submarines, frigates, destroyers, and cruisers. There are 60 peaceful use nuclear power plants in 15 countries under construction today. We have 4 in the United States, 2 in the Carolinas, and 2 in Georgia. There are 28 under construction in China and 14 in India. These 2 countries are pursuing it, and predominantly because they represent about 1/3 of the population of the world. They need energy. India has some thorium-fueled reactors on there, and they are probably the only country really pursuing that right now, but they have large thorium deposits. I included thorium in my discussion only because the media has recently described a large deposit between salmon and lead ore that exists here in Idaho. I want you to know it's nothing new. It's just come back up to bid. We knew about it 50 years ago. Okay, the types of reactors that you use to make peaceful uses of nuclear power are predominantly in this country pressurized water reactors and boiling water reactors. 70% of our nuclear power plants are pressurized water, and then 100% of all Navy reactors are pressurized. The other 30% represents boiling water reactors. pressurized water reactors, just to give you an idea of the difference between them, they operate at 2,000 psi, 650 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiling water reactor operates at 1,000 psi, 650. So the capital cost of constructing a boiling water reactor is significantly less, just because less steel required to contain the same thing, less pressure. Gas-cooled, you like, and predominantly because these other two concepts I mentioned to you have about a 38% efficiency, thermal efficiency. Gas-cooled reactors can operate at much higher temperatures. They use helium as a coolant, direct drive into the turbine, but they can operate at 1,100 to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and hence the efficiency has now gone to 50 to 55%. And I mentioned to you there's a CANDU heavy water reactor, and I'll just skip over for the time, but it exists. And then you look at the future. Where do we go? And liquid metal fast cooled, the liquid metal cooled fast breeder reactor is the concept. There are about 5 of them operable in the world. The United States used to have 2. We started to build a 3rd, and politics kicked in, and that has entirely been defunded now. But the reason you like fast metal, listen to the word breeder. That plant, operated and designed properly, you can start with 100 pounds of fissile material, operated for about 10 to 12 years, produce all of that power, and you will end up with approximately 200 pounds of fissile material to take care of the next generation of reactors. It is a true breeder. And the way it happens, the reason you like it, the efficiency is great because the coolant is liquid sodium, a tremendous heat transfer capability. But also important, when you get it in there, the sodium is impervious to neutrons. It doesn't soak them up. So every neutron that you get from a fission goes right to another fission or a breeding concept. How the nuclear the electricity produced from nuclear power. And let me remind you that electricity in the United States, 50% of it is produced from coal. The United States, 18% is produced from nuclear. France, 80, Japan, 30, Korea, 30, Germany used to be 12 to 18, and with the Fukushima issue, Merkel is going to phase out all nuclear power plants in Germany by year 2020. The reason that France, Japan, and Korea are emphasizing nuclear, they have very limited fossil fuel availability. You must buy it all and import it in. Now, let me just move to the next stage, and because many of your energy dollars, the Atomic Energy Commission, Department of Energy, is responsible for keeping updated and current the entire nuclear weapons arsenal. In 1973, we peaked at 25,000 megatons. A megaton is 1 million tons, equivalent to the explosive power of 4,000 World War IIs. Today, we have about 16 to 18,000 megatons, and that is because of the SALT treaty, Strategic Arm Limitation, which both United States and Russia reduced by 30 to 40% their nuclear arsenals. Want to let you know, though, the delivery mechanisms have not diminished. One B-2 bomber, one B-1 bomber, or a B-52 bomber carries the weapons load equivalent to all of the explosive power of World War II. Just on one bomber. One U.S. Trident submarine with 24 Poseidon missiles with a 7,000-mile range, almost pinpoint accuracy, is equivalent to 30 World War IIs. We used to have approximately 950 ICBMs located in Montana, Wyoming, and Dakotas. SALT Limitation Treaty put us down, and they were located in the Great Plains, put us down to 500, and these 500, again, multiple weapon loads, 2, 4, 6, 12. Explosives on the same missile can be dropped arbitrarily wherever you want them. 8,000-mile range, equivalent to 100 World War IIs. Just to bring you up to date about the status of fuel for the nuclear navy. The USS Stennis was launched here a couple of years ago, has 2 nuclear power plants on it. And when I started in the program, our objective was to get a nuclear submarine that could stay submerged and not have to come up to raise a snorkel or find a ship to fuel it for 6 months. That has been one of the most successful programs I've ever associated with. That aircraft carrier does not need to be refueled for about 23 years. So that has been a pure successful program, and I'll tell you about some that haven't been. Okay, is it safe? Let's talk about the 3 reactor accidents we're all familiar with. 1974, 3 Mile Island. And it was due to operator aero malfunction, equipment, poor judgment, and the like, but they did melt down the core of one of the 2 units at 3 Mile Island. The neat part about it, and I was involved in looking at it, is these reactors are designed to shut down and protect all personnel and people outside of the periphery area safely. And it was about a $1 billion capital investment that they lost, but there was not one person injured, there was not one person who received an excess of the allowable irradiation, and I viewed it as that reactor operated just like we designed it. It took care of all the malfunctions that occurred with people and equipment. Now, you cannot say the same with Chernobyl. That is the granddaddy of all. And it was a plutonium production reactor to provide fuel, plutonium fuel for weapons in Russia. And due to a series of errors in there, in 5 seconds, that reactor rose in power to 500 times its design limit. And as a result, because it had a carbide moderator in it, and that's plutonium reactors can have that, the carbide caught fire, there was an explosion, there was fire, and 7 million curies. And for those of you who are not familiar with curies, let me assure you that is a bunch. Was released, and there were hundreds of deaths and thousands of square miles contaminated and will still be contaminated. Fukushima, Japan, in 2011, more recently. Again, these reactors are designed to operate under the most stringent of conditions and account for about every feasible accident that you can analyze for. What they did not account for was an earthquake 5 or 10 miles off the coast of Japan. A 50 and 90 foot tsunami hit the reactors, and they in fact all shut down. But the problem is when they shut down, some of these reactors, if it's a recent shutdown, they are extremely radioactively hot. And that radioactivity will cause boiling or melting. In this particular case, that tsunami also wiped out the backup power. So they had absolutely no additional coolant. In some of the pools, they boiled them dry, and this was reactor fuel that been out of the reactor for days, months, a few years. In the one reactor that shut down, there was a hydrogen explosion in it, and it eventually shut down. But, and I can't talk about the deaths because I don't have that number, but I can tell you that the little town next to it, 18,000 people are still unaccounted for from that tsunami. The result, as I want to summarize for you how bad it is or how good it is, those 3 releases represent significant accidents in reactors, but for 15,000 years of reactor operation. Acceptable, that's a personal choice. Talk to you about problems very quickly. Nuclear power is getting to be very expensive, and part of it is an environmental and the safety analysis that you have to go through. Secondly is typically labor and materials costs. 10 to 20 years ago, we built a nuclear power plant for somewhere in the $2,000 to $2,500 per kilowatt, and this was generally 1,000 megawatt. You need large sizes to get economy. Today, those capital costs have increased by a factor of 4. And in addition, it'll take anywhere from 8, 10, maybe 12 years to go through the permit process, the hazard analysis, the safety analysis, the licensing process, and constructing. And that bill is about $10 to $12 billion. So those kind of power plants cannot be useful here in Idaho. I mean, almost you begin to think of, I don't know if Idaho Power is worth $12 billion and the like, but the cost of one plant, and in addition to that, Idaho Power doesn't be 1,000 megawatts electrical at one time, which then lends you down to look at natural gas. And I put it there predominantly because that is the fill-in alternative. People like Idaho Power and some of the other utilities, they need 200, 300, 400 megawatts. They can do that today, and fortunately with the supply of natural gas that has just increased significantly, you can do that for about $2,000 to $2,500 per kilowatt, but in addition, you can do it in about a 3 to 4 year period when you have an operating plant. Now, natural gas has 1/2 the carbon imprint of coal, so it's not clean, totally. Just to briefly touch here, the green and renewable energies are the hydro, the wind, and the solar. Sun's got to shine, the wind's got to blow, and you need water for the hydro, which we have about 18% of our power in the United States is also produced with hydro. But then you have the fish, the warming of the rivers, the damming up of pristine areas in the mountains to get the water. Geothermal. We have a field that's operated in Northern California for about 30 years. It has about 1,000 to 1,200 megawatts of electrical. It's been very, very successful. And the like, and recently identified as a new field at the southern end of the Salton Sea in Southern California. And it has potential of 2,000 megawatts of electrical, which is very useful down there because Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, and Los Angeles all fit on that grid system. The other problem, let me get to this. This is probably the most formidable problem ever tackled. On the back of your paper, I have 2 maps on one page, and one of them is the nuclear power plants in the United States. And the other map is the nuclear arsenal sites in the United States. Okay, what you're looking at is 129 sites in 39 states containing 70,000 tons of spent reactor fuel. And here I had to quote somebody else's words, 20,000 giant canisters of defense high-level radiation. Okay, this 70,000 tons you would love to reprocess, and predominantly because whenever you pull a fuel element out of a reactor, you've just used 1 or 2% of the available energy that you have in there. Each one of these spent fuel concepts have an additional amount of 170 times that amount of energy that you pulled out left to go. You just got to reprocess it. And in that is also, every nuclear reactor, you generate a little bit of plutonium. Okay, and you need to process this out, and I'll explain to that. Due to political, not due to necessarily technical, but it is a terrible challenge. I want you to know that. The reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel was stopped only because of the slight amount of plutonium that shows up, and President Carter was concerned about the proliferation for terrorists of the plutonium. So we stopped all reprocessing in the United States. This stuff is now stored at the various sites shown on the map, and some of these reactors were licensed originally for 20 years, okay, and they have not reprocessed a single subassembly. They have been relicensed in some cases for 40 years. Some of them have even gone 60 years, and now we're looking at 80 years to store this fuel at those reactor sites. That was never ever planned for because the U.S. government says, you develop the fuel concepts and provide electricity to the nation, we will provide you a waste disposal and a reprocessing. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to charge you 1/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour of nuclear energy generated. It has only generated about $35 to $38 billion, and the government has failed miserably. We have no processing capability, nothing to do but to store it at the reactor sites. Okay, they started to say, okay, how do we bury it and contain it long term? We studied the salt beds and domes in the Midwest. So long story short, the reason we like salt domes, it represents about 1 million years of stable geological activity. The problem in the Midwest turns out to be there were so many oil wells and gas wells drilled that we could not be assured that we could keep the water out of these salt beds. And we need no water in any storage facility. We studied that for 30 years and abandoned. About that, 10 years before that, we said, okay, let's look at another site, and we looked at Yucca Mountain, about 100 miles north of Las Vegas. That has got to be the most studied piece of real estate in the world. We have mined and have that thing ready to go and start putting some of this high-level radioactive waste in it, and it was all retrievable. Don't you understand that? Obama did not want to, he campaigned on no Yucca Mountain, and then also so did Harry Reid. And so Obama didn't include it in his budget. Harry Reid wouldn't allow it to come forward in the Senate, and it was defunded. You talk about government programs that disappear quickly, that one was immediate. Within a year, that place was shut down, all the equipment sold and transferred out, and it sits idle right now, almost ready to use. And then the governor put the final nail in the coffin. The governor of Nevada came along, he had a veto right, and he says, not in my backyard. Okay, the government went to court because they were sued by the environmental community. And the first judge put, Yucca is okay for a temporary storage of 10,000 years. And that was okay because we knew the stuff we could handle and retrieve and we were counting on 20 to 50,000 years. It was appealed by the environmental community. And in the Court of Appeals, the next judge says, no way for Yucca Mountain unless the government can certify absolute safety for 1 million years. And I'd like to quote to you the end of that court judgment. The hazard related to radioactive waste is so great that no element of doubt should be allowed to exist regarding safety. 1 million years is 40,000 generations. It is hundreds of ice age. So Yucca Mountain is dead. We have no reprocessing capability, and we have no place to store the fuel. How much fuel are you talking about? You have those up there. If you could reprocess those 70,000 tons, you could end up with just a few cubic yards per power plant. You can consolidate it down, put it into glass beads, put glass logs on it, put it in the stainless steel canisters, put them in the dry environment, and they'll last basically forever. A single waste site would exist for the entire United States, and yet we have none. And I am just unqualified anymore to talk about the high-level military waste in those 20,000 canisters. I know what it is. It is the separation of plutonium from uranium, and you can never get pure. And the reason you worry about plutonium on it is basically with storage of this waste, 97 to 98% of it decays within about a 5-year period. That 2 to 3% represents cesium, strontium, and iodine. That is significant for the health. It's ingested into the food stream and the animals that we eat and the like. And the half-lives of them are 20 to 200, 300 years. So they hang around for a long time. Cesium and strontium act just like calcium in the body. It's absorbed into the bloodstreams, the organs, and the bone marrows. So you've got to protect yourself from that. The other killer in there to talk about is you can't ever get absolutely everything pure and get all the plutonium out. They're just trace amounts. And plutonium is not a really bad material to handle, because it decays alpha-wise, and you can stop the decay, or you can stop an alpha particle with a sheet of paper. It's that soft and large. It doesn't take anything but ingested and put into the organs and the lung system. It's immediate cancer causing. And I think I skipped over one page in my, no, I didn't skip over it. I wanted to talk about making bombs. Would you hand that tennis ball?
Yeah.
Okay, on that front page, I talked to you, 30 pounds of uranium-235 is needed to make a bomb. 5 pounds of plutonium, and that plutonium has a specific gravity about 18 to 19. That is 5 pounds of plutonium. So you can make a lot of bombs carrying in very succinct patterns and small packages and the like. By the time you put all the triggering method, it gets bigger, but that is what you need to start with, severed and imploded to get the mass critical amount to make a bomb. I think I've covered what my purpose was to let you walk away from here understanding what the concept was, fission, understand why we would like it, and the 10 million times the equivalent weight is the real issue there, tell you what the status of the program is, and tell you what the problems are. And on the back of this paper, those are my conclusions on there, that the court cases represent just idiotic, asinine attempts to stop the nuclear program. And there seems to be, and we probably won't have it with this administration, no effort to appeal that and get a rational decision down. The other thing I just point to, the nuclear technology is absolutely well proven. The main thing you like about nuclear is it is probably the only fuel source available to us, and probably will be for the next 100 years, that can supply the energy requirements of this planet and do it in a carbon-free environment and help control or limit the global warming issue. And that's why you want to still go, and what our government and leaders are going to do just boggles my mind. I can't see how they can abandon it. We have no other choice. That's it, and I thank you, and I'd be available to ask questions if you'd like. Also, I just want to take one moment. A year or so ago, I was asked to present a nuclear paper at Pasadena, and I have about 20 copies up here. The thing that you'd like about it, asked the question to me, what are the available nuclear technologies that can be used to pump water? And the water really was going to be pumped out of the Yukon River and the Alaska River down through British Columbia, divided and sent to the Midwest, and 60 million acre feet comes down through the arid West, and 20 million acre feet goes to Mexico. It's called NWAPA, North American Water and Power Alliance. In that, and then they asked me to take one step further and said, what would you do if you wanted to further advance the nuclear program and technology and get more efficient concepts? And rather than bore you with all the reactor concepts, this paper describes them basically in a layman's language that I hope any of you could understand. Not nearly the numbers that I've talked to you about. Yeah, thank you.